Welcome back, movie buffs. Today, we are diving into the 2025 movie Nuremberg. But before we begin, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss any of our heart-pounding movie breakdowns. In May 1945, World War II was coming to an end. A group of American soldiers are escorting civilians down a road when a Nazi car suddenly drives through the crowd. The soldiers raise their guns ready to fire. The driver waves a piece of white cloth to show they are surrendering. To everyone's surprise, Hermann, Hitler's second-in-command, steps out of the car and calmly asks the soldiers to carry his luggage. Later, in Washington, D.C., Supreme Court Justice Jackson is told that Hermann has been captured alive in Austria. The original plan was to execute him, but Jackson does not believe in punishing people without a fair trial. He wants the surviving Nazi leaders charged with war crimes. He talks it over with his secretary, who says it will be difficult. International law makes it complicated. One country cannot judge another country's citizens or tell them how to behave, and holding trials in Germany creates legal problems. Still, Jackson believes it can be done. He says they just need organization and suggests forming a tribunal with judges from each of the Allied nations. Meanwhile, on a train heading to Luxembourg, U.S. Army psychiatrist Douglas chats with a woman named Lila and even shows her a small card trick. When the train arrives, Sergeant Howie greets him and explains that he will serve as Douglas's interpreter. Before heading to the Grand Hotel Mondorf, they meet Colonel Andrus. He explains that the hotel is actually a secret military prison holding the remaining Nazi leaders. The Allied countries are still deciding whether these men will stand trial. Douglas has been brought in to monitor their mental health. Their biggest concern is suicide. 3 prisoners have already self-deleted using hidden poison capsules, and they cannot risk losing any more. Douglas's main focus will be Hermann. When he was captured, he had a large supply of medicine. He claims it is for his heart, but he takes 40 pills a day. Douglas suspects he is addicted. Before even settling in, Douglas asks to see Hermann. He finds him sitting calmly in his room, reading. Douglas enters with Howie and begins a basic medical check, taking Hermann's pulse and listening to his lungs. Hermann insists he needs his medicine because he still feels pain from a gunshot wound he got during World War I. Douglas tells him that losing weight would help his heart. Hermann clearly does not like being called overweight. After they leave the room, Douglas quietly tells Howie that Hermann understands English. He could tell from Hermann's reaction to the word fat before it was even translated. Next, Douglas meets the other prisoners. Dr. Ley, who ran the Nazi slave labor program, claims he was never power-hungry like the others. The Grand Admiral complains that he has been held for 76 days without charges and calls it a violation of the Geneva Convention. Julius, Hitler's former propaganda chief, asks Douglas if he is Jewish. When Douglas says no, Julius replies that psychiatry is still a Jewish profession. Meanwhile, Hermann begins dieting and exercising. He stops asking for his medicine. That night, Douglas writes everything he has learned in his journal. He comes to one clear conclusion. Hermann is the one holding the group together. He seems to be their leader. Douglas suddenly gets an idea and asks Howie to take him to the library. They load a wheelbarrow with books about the Nazi leaders. Douglas believes that if he studies their histories, he can better understand them and gain their trust. He also wants to figure out what drives someone to commit such terrible crimes. He hopes that one day he can publish his findings and maybe prevent something like this from happening again. When they return to the hotel, a guard tells them Hermann is struggling to breathe. They rush to his room. Douglas takes one look and realizes Hermann is having a heart attack. He tells the soldier to bring regular aspirin and keeps Hermann calm with slow breathing exercises. Hermann keeps reaching for a photo of his wife, so Douglas gives it to him. When the aspirin arrives, Hermann spits it out. Douglas takes one himself to show it is safe. Only then does Hermann swallow the pills. By the time the doctor arrives, Hermann is already recovering. He smiles and thanks Douglas in English. Back in Washington, Jackson learns that all the Allied countries have agreed to participate in the trial. The Judge Advocate General sends Army lawyer Amen to speak with him. Many officials want the trial finished quickly so the Nazis can be executed. Some do not even believe a trial is necessary. At the hotel, Douglas gives the prisoners Rorschach tests and promises their answers will stay private. Hermann is polite and friendly, answering in English. Julius treats the test like a joke and compares the images to women's privates. Later, Jackson finds out that Congress does not support the trial. They simply want the prisoners hanged. The president offers little help, so Jackson looks for support elsewhere. The next day, Jackson and Amen travel to the Vatican to meet the Pope. They discuss justice and responsibility. In the end, the Pope refuses to back the trials. Jackson reminds him that the church once signed an agreement with Hitler. The Pope says it was meant to protect Catholics in Germany. Jackson argues that it gave the Nazis credibility, and history will remember him for that. Jackson's words make the Pope think again. After a moment he agrees to support the trials. Later, Douglas and Howie transport the prisoners by plane. They inform them that there will be a trial. Hermann asks Douglas what he learned about him from the Rorschach test. Douglas says he seems intelligent, narcissistic and obsessed with control. Hermann shrugs and says those traits are obvious. Then he mentions that he heard Douglas can perform magic and asks to see a trick. Douglas makes a coin disappear in his hand. Hermann smiles and says that one day he will perform his own magic trick by escaping execution. As the plane flies over government buildings destroyed by Allied bombing, the prisoners grow quiet. Much of the city is in ruins. The Palace of Justice has also been damaged. Jackson tells Amen that they will repair one courtroom and make it large enough to hold 600 people. A British assistant prosecutor named Fife warns Jackson that anything short of total success will be seen as failure. The pressure is heavy. That afternoon, the prisoners arrived at a prison in Nuremberg. Colonel Andrus explains the strict changes made for security and to prevent self-deletion. Mattresses are stuffed with straw. Desks are cardboard. Beds are bolted to the floor. Chairs are removed at night. The prisoners must sleep with their hands visible above the blankets so they cannot hide anything. Lay breaks down when he sees his small, dirty cell. Hermann reacts differently. He studies the place calmly and even admires the solid German construction. He tells Douglas that no one has ever defeated him. He reminds him that he chose to surrender. To him, this prison is exactly where he wants to be. Douglas is confused by Hermann's growing confidence. Instead of fear, Hermann seems stronger each day. Douglas knows he needs to get closer to him to understand why. He also learns that Hitler's deputy Rudolf is being held there. When Hermann arrived, Rudolf even gave him the forbidden Nazi salute, which angered Andrus. During the war, Rudolf had survived a plane crash and tried to negotiate peace with British leaders. His offer was rejected and he was imprisoned afterwards. At times he claims to have amnesia, then suddenly acts normal again. So most people believed he was faking it. Douglas asks Hermann for information that could discredit Rudolf. Hermann agrees, but only if Douglas delivers letters to his wife and daughter, who have been missing since his surrender. Later, Hermann is allowed to speak with Rudolf. Rudolf claims he does not recognize him. In private, Hermann tells Douglas that Rudolf is lying. He says Rudolf pretends to have amnesia, but when Hermann first arrived, Rudolf gave him a salute. That proves he remembers. After some time, Douglas and Howie locate Hermann's wife, Amy, and his daughter, Etta. Etta is so grateful for the letters that she hugs Douglas. Seeing their situation makes Douglas feel sorry for them, and he agrees to take a letter from Emmy back to Hermann. When they return to the prison, reporters are gathered outside. Andrus explains that the prisoners are about to be formally charged, and the news has spread. They go cell by cell to read the charges. Hermann is accused of crimes against peace, crimes against humanity, war crimes and conspiracy. Julius listens and then asks for a Jewish lawyer. When it is Lay's turn, he panics. He insists he never killed anyone. Douglas tries to calm him, but Lay punches him. Guards pin Lay to the wall. In his panic, Lay accidentally speaks English and begs them to shoot him. Later, Douglas goes to a bar to clear his head and runs into Lila. He learns she is a reporter covering the trials. She warns him that the whole city will turn the trials into a spectacle. Back at the prison, Douglas gives Hermann the letter from his wife. At the same time, the media talks about preparations for the courtroom. A tunnel will move the prisoners safely to court. The lights will be so bright that people will need sunglasses. Jackson continues building his case when he runs into a problem. The Germans plan to argue that their invasion of Denmark and Norway was defensive. They claim the British were planning to attack first. No documents have been shown yet, but Jackson realizes they need to know what evidence Germany might have so they can prepare a response. That evening, Jackson secretly meets Douglas. He asks him to gather information from the prisoners. Douglas hesitates, saying it breaks doctor-patient confidentiality. Jackson points out that Douglas has already broken that when he started writing reports. When Douglas asks why they do not simply execute the prisoners, Jackson says that would only turn them into martyrs. Later, in prison, Douglas shares cigarettes with Hermann and asks about Hitler. Hermann says he is surprised Douglas never asked before. He explains that Hitler made them feel proud to be German again and promised to restore their country's former strength. Hermann claims the camps were meant for labor, not killing, and blames the worst crimes on others. Even so, Hermann refuses to say anything negative about Hitler. The next day, Douglas tells Jackson that Hermann knows how to make himself seem sympathetic. He wonders how much of Hermann's story is actually true. Amen becomes angry and accuses Douglas of defending Hermann. The two argue. Douglas explains that his job is to analyze Hermann, not defend him. He believes Hermann only cared about making Germany strong again. It does not seem like Hermann personally wanted to kill Jews, but he also did not care that they were dying. Jackson remains doubtful, and Amen thinks Douglas is defending Hermann. Douglas warns him that if they go into court with assumptions instead of facts, Hermann will eat them. Later, Douglas talks with Lay, who apologizes for punching him earlier. Lay says he has started preparing his defense. For the first time, Douglas feels like Lay is opening up to him. But a few hours later, an alarm sounds. Douglas rushes to Lay's cell. It is too late. Lay has killed himself. He used his towel as a rope and stuffed a cloth in his mouth to stay quiet. Andrus is furious. He decides to bring in another doctor to review everything and give a second opinion. During another conversation, Douglas asks Hermann what he thinks about suicide. Hermann calls it a cowardly move. He also senses Douglas is under pressure and warns him to protect himself. He says allies are not always truly on the same side. To make his point, he tells a story about his father's Jewish friend who secretly abused his mother. Soon after, Dr. Gilbert arrives to review Douglas's reports. He believes Rudolph's amnesia is real. He suggests that he and Douglas write a book about the case together, but Douglas declines. As the days pass, Douglas continues speaking with the prisoners and sharing information with Jackson. He also keeps visiting Hermann's family. He performs small magic tricks for Etta, which makes her happy. He brings more letters back to Hermann. Hermann asks Douglas to teach him the tricks so he can impress his daughter someday. Howie notices that Douglas often visits Hermann alone and starts to feel suspicious, but Douglas ignores him. The night before the trial, Douglas asks Hermann how he plans to defend himself. Hermann asks if he is speaking as a friend. Douglas says yes. Hermann explains that he will accept responsibility for what he did, but he will not take the blame for crimes committed by others without his knowledge. Douglas later shares this information with Jackson. The next day, the prisoners are taken through a tunnel to the courthouse. As they walk, Hermann calmly talks with the others in German. Jackson opens the trial with a speech. The proceedings are broadcast live on the radio. Hermann asks to make his own opening statement, but the judges refuse. They simply ask for his plea. Guilty or not guilty? Hermann answers in German and says he is not guilty. That evening, Douglas goes to visit Hermann's family. When he arrives, he finds their furniture piled outside, broken and abandoned. A neighbor tells him the Americans took them away. Douglas rushes back to Andrus for answers. After making a few calls, Andrus learns what happened. Emmy was arrested because she is suspected of helping Hermann steal artwork. Etta was sent to a convent and is not allowed any contact. Andrus asks Douglas how he even knew where they were hiding. Douglas avoids the question. Later, Douglas visits Hermann and lies to him, saying his family is safe. But Gilbert interrupts and tells Hermann the truth. Furious, Douglas follows Gilbert into the hallway and starts a fight. Guards pull them apart, and Andrus scolds both men for acting childish. The trial continues. Jackson presents new evidence. It is footage the public has never seen before. The video shows the camps after they were liberated. Bodies are piled everywhere. Survivors are starving and sick. Many have tuberculosis. Only one person is strong enough to speak about the torture. It also shows a machine clearing the camp of hundreds of human bodies. The prisoners' nationalities and numbers are tattooed on their skin. The ovens and factories are shown. They could burn hundreds of bodies each day. Hermann refuses to keep watching. He puts on headphones and sunglasses to block it out. Douglas walks away, shaken and close to breaking down. When Hermann returns to his cell, Douglas is waiting for him. He demands to know how Hermann could claim he knew nothing about the camps. Hermann says the film is fake. He calls Douglas a hypocrite and points out that Americans killed thousands of Japanese civilians with the push of a button. Douglas snaps. He yells that there is a difference between casualties in war and planned genocide. They argue intensely. Before leaving, Douglas tells Hermann that his choices destroyed his own family, and he'll be hanged. Later, Douglas goes to a bar and drinks heavily. Lila finds him and uses his drunken state to get him talking about his work. The next morning, a newspaper publishes an article about Douglas's private conversations with Hermann. Andrus is furious and fires him on the spot. Before Douglas leaves, Andrus stops him and shares some news. He says Emmy and Etta have been released. They were cleared and allowed to go free. At the train station, Douglas finds Howie waiting for him. Howie looks upset. He finally opens up and says he was born in Germany to Jewish parents. With the little money they had, he and his sister managed to escape. Their parents were not as lucky. The Nazis killed them. Howie breaks down and asks Douglas to do something that will guarantee a win against Herman. Douglas quietly says he is only a psychiatrist. There is only so much he can do. Before they part, Howie says the Holocaust happened because people did not act until it was too late. A few moments later, Douglas rushes into Jackson's office. He tells him the trial is a trap. Herman surrendered on purpose. He wants to take the stand and use the courtroom to defend Hitler in front of the world. Douglas warns that Jackson cannot beat him with standard arguments. He hands Jackson his notebook filled with private notes and conversations. He says the key is to use Herman's vanity against him. The next day, Douglas stays in Germany as a civilian to watch the trial. When Herman takes the stand, he behaves confidently. He even poses for the cameras like a hero. Jackson questions him, but Herman stays calm. He claims the camps were only for labor and protection. He says he did not know about any killings. Jackson presents a document Herman signed called the Final Solution, which ordered the extermination of the Jewish population. Herman insists it was mistranslated. He says it only meant removing Jews from Germany, not killing them. Jackson grows frustrated and loses his temper. The judges warn him to stay professional. Feeling defeated, he steps away. Fife takes over. He calmly points out that Herman remained second in command the entire war, during which 6 million people were killed, and yet he knew nothing about it. Then he asks if Herman will still follow Hitler, knowing now all the evil Hitler committed. Herman proudly says yes and even shouts a salute to Hitler. The statement was what the court needed to destroy him. After the session, Andrus, Jackson, Howie, and Fife thank Douglas. His notes help them expose Herman. Later, Douglas visits Herman one last time. He admits he broke confidentiality to help the prosecution. He says goodbye. The next day, Douglas finally leaves Germany while the prisoners receive their sentences. Herman and the other Nazi leaders are sentenced to death by hanging. The executions will take place at midnight. The prisoners will not be told until an hour before. If they ask for sleeping pills, they will be given harmless placebos instead. As Andrus speaks with reporters from the Allied countries, Herman uses the magic trick Douglas once showed him. He reveals that he has been hiding a poison capsule the whole time. An alarm sounds through the prison. By the time Andrus reaches Herman's cell, Herman is already dead. Meanwhile, Julius begins to fall apart. He panics and struggles to stay calm. Howie gently steadies him and helps him get dressed before leading him to the execution room. Julius tries to act brave. He shouts a few words in German, hoping to look strong, but the fear quickly takes over. He starts crying. Moments later, he is hanged. In his final seconds, he wets himself. One by one, the rest of the prisoners are executed that night. After everything is over, Douglas writes a book about what he experienced. He hopes it will warn people that evil like this does not disappear. It hides in plain sight. It can exist anywhere, even in the United States. The book does not sell. During interviews, he tries to sound the alarm, but reporters do not take him seriously. They treat his fears like exaggerations. The weight of it all slowly wears him down. He starts drinking heavily. Eventually, he takes his own life using the same type of poison Herman used. Jackson returns to the Supreme Court. The trial he fought for became the foundation for modern war crimes law and future prosecutions around the world. That's a wrap on our breakdown of the 2025 movie Nuremberg. What do you think about this movie? Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss one of our thrilling movie analyses and deep dives. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay tuned for more edge of your seat content.